She did not plan to destroy her life on a Tuesday night. It happened in less than 5 seconds. Emily Parker turned the steering wheel of her beat-up compact car, trying to squeeze into a narrow spot in front of the diner. The street was wet from the cold drizzle. Her hands shook from exhaustion. She misjudged the distance by a few centimeters. A harsh scrape tore through the quiet of the night. Her whole body went rigid. She slammed the brakes and closed her eyes for a moment, her breath trapped in her chest. The sound echoed inside her head. "No," she whispered. "Please, no." She forced herself to look. The car beside hers was not just any car. It was a low, black luxury sedan with tinted windows and polished chrome. Even under the weak streetlights, it stood out in that working-class street. The sedan now had a long white scratch along the back door, where her faded blue car had kissed the paint. Her stomach dropped. Emily got out on shaky legs, jeans damp from the drizzle. She crouched down to inspect the damage. The scratch was ugly, long, and deep enough to show the metal underneath. "This is bad," she whispered. Her first instinct was simple. Get back in the car and drive away. No one was on the street. The diner was almost empty at that hour. The security camera above the door might not even work. The building across the street was mostly dark. No one saw. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Her rent was already late. Her checking account was almost empty. She had $32 in her wallet. A repair on a car like this would cost more than she made in a month. "You can't pay for this," a cruel voice in her head said. "If you walk away, no one will ever know." Emily stared at the scratch, then at her own reflection on the tinted window. The reflection looked pale, with dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked small next to the expensive car. She thought about her mother, about every time she had heard the same sentence growing up. "We do not lie, Em, even when it hurts." Her throat burned. She looked around once more. The street was still empty. The drizzle tapped softly on the roofs and hoods. She opened her old purse and dug inside. Receipts, a pen with no cap, a crumpled grocery list. Finally, she found a small notepad with the logo of Harbor Street Diner on the top. Her fingers were numb from the cold and fear when she clicked the pen. She pressed the paper against the side of her car and began to write. "I'm so sorry. I accidentally scratched your car while trying to park. My name is Emily Parker. I'm a waitress at Harbor Street Diner. I don't have much money, but I will try to pay for the damage, even if it takes time. Phone 917-555-4381. Her handwriting was uneven. The ink smudged slightly where a raindrop fell. She hesitated on the last line, then underlined her name. She folded the note once, carefully, and slid it under the wiper of the black sedan. Her chest felt tight, but there was a strange calm under the fear. She had done what she knew was right. That did not erase the problem, but at least she would be able to sleep. Maybe. She took one last look at the damage, then walked inside the diner, bracing herself for another long shift and for the phone call that would probably ruin her month. 2 hours later, the street looked different. The drizzle had stopped. The wet pavement reflected the yellow streetlights. The diner sign buzzed softly. A black SUV rolled down the block and stopped behind the scratched sedan. Another car pulled up on the other side, blocking the view from the corner. 4 men stepped out first, all in dark coats, eyes scanning the street with sharp, practiced movements. One stayed near the SUV. 2 walked ahead. The last man opened the back door of the SUV. Luca Zanetti stepped onto the sidewalk. He adjusted the cuffs of his black shirt as he closed the door. The fabric stretched over strong forearms. He wore no tie, no coat, despite the cold. His presence alone seemed to shift the air. His dark hair was cut short on the sides and a bit longer on top, slightly pushed back. His jaw was defined with a short beard. His eyes, a dark hazel, moved slowly over the quiet street with a calm that made his men stand straighter. One of the men, Vince Hale, approached him. "We're clear." The meeting went smooth. "You want to head home?" Luca nodded once and walked toward the sedan. He stopped. His gaze moved from the hood, along the curve of the car. until it landed on the long white scratch across the rear door. The mark stood out harshly against the black paint. Vince swore under his breath. "You have got to be kidding me. Who did this? Do you want me to pull footage? We can—" Luca lifted a hand. He did not raise his voice. He did not curse. He simply studied the scratch for a moment, then reached for the folded piece of paper trapped under the wiper. He opened it. The handwriting was messy, the letters slightly crooked. The paper was damp at the edges, the ink a little blurred in one corner. He read the note twice. "Someone hit the car?" Another guard asked from the side. "You want us to find them?" Luca did not answer immediately. His eyes remained on the name, Emily Parker. Something about the note felt different. People did not do this. In his world, people ran. They lied. They begged. They did not stand in the cold rain writing apologies with their full name and working address. He looked up at the diner sign. Harbor Street Diner. The place was cheap, not his style. Red vinyl booths, greasy food, strong coffee. He had passed it many nights on the way to other places. Once, on a late night, he had gone inside for a quick coffee and a quiet corner to think. He remembered a girl with tired eyes and a shy smile behind the counter. She had refilled his mug without asking questions, hands a little shaky, but voice polite and soft. She had called him sir, even though his black shirt and heavy watch made him stand out in that place. Luca folded the note slowly and slipped it into his pocket. "No broken glass," he said. "No dents, just paint." Vince frowned. "Still an insult. It is a scratch," Luca cut in. "The paint can be fixed." Vince looked at him, confused. "You sure? We can get a name from the plate cameras on the block. Find whoever." "I already have a name," Luca said. He tapped his pocket lightly. "Emily Parker, waitress." He turned his head toward the security camera mounted on the corner of the building next to the diner's sign. "Get the footage from that camera," he told Vince, "and check if the one on the deli across the street caught anything." Vince nodded, still slightly thrown by his boss's calm tone. "You got it." Luca opened the sedan's door. Before he got in, he looked once more at the scratch. He did not like people touching his things without permission. He did not like damage, even small damage. But what bothered him now was not the paint. It was the note that felt out of place in his world. A girl who could have walked away had chosen to write her name. He wanted to see her face again, not as a blurred memory from a late night in a cheap diner, but clearly in front of him. By 3 in the morning, the video was ready. They were in a private office above one of Luca's clubs, the music from the floor below only a faint thump through the thick door. One of his tech guys fast-forwarded through hours of footage until the black sedan appeared on the screen. Luca sat in front of the monitor, one elbow on the armrest of the leather chair, fingers resting against his lips. Vince stood behind him, arms crossed. The sedan glided into the frame and parked. The timestamp showed 11:18 p.m. The street was quiet, a few cars passing now and then. A few minutes later, a small blue car pulled in behind the sedan. "Here we go," the tech guy said. The blue car tried to squeeze into the narrow space. There was a visible jolt on the screen as the bumpers connected. Emily's car stopped. They watched her get out. She wore jeans, a simple black t-shirt, and a light jacket. Her brown hair was tied back in a ponytail. A few strands stuck to her face from the drizzle. She looked young. Even in the grainy footage, the panic on her face was clear as she bent to inspect the damage. Vince snorted. "She looks like she wants to disappear." They watched her pace back and forth for a moment, fingers tangled in her hair. Her shoulders were tense. Twice she turned toward the driver's door of her own car, as if ready to leave. Twice she stopped. Then she dug into her bag, pulled out paper and a pen, and pressed the sheet against her car, writing. The drizzle hit her hair and shoulders as she wrote. She finished, walked over to the black sedan, and placed the note under the wiper with careful fingers. As she turned away, she looked at the scratch again and winced, almost as if it hurt her. She disappeared from the frame into the diner. The tech guy paused the video. Luca leaned back in his chair. He studied the frozen image of Emily's face when she turned toward the diner door. Her features were soft, with a small nose and full mouth. Her eyes looked darker in the footage, but he remembered them, warm brown, with a quiet sadness he had noticed once from across a room. "How much does she make in that place?" he asked quietly. Vince shrugged. "Minimum wage and tips. So not much." "Why?" Luca ignored the question. "Pull everything you can on her," he said. "Address, background, family. I want it clean and fast." "On a waitress who scratched your car?" Vince asked. Luca's gaze shifted to him. It was not angry. It was just steady enough to stop any more questions. "On Emily Parker," he said. Vince raised his hand slightly. "Okay, I'll get the file." When Vince left the room, Luca turned back to the screen. He pressed play again and watched the moment Emily slipped the note under the wiper. He reached into his pocket and opened the paper one more time, even though he knew every line by now. "I don't have much money, but I will try to pay for the damage, even if it takes time." People in his world never wrote things like that. They asked for favors. They offered deals. They hid until he found them. They did not promise effort. They promised excuses. There was no excuse in her note. Only fear and honesty. Luca folded the paper and closed his hand around it. He wanted to see what a girl like that would do when she realized who she was dealing with. Emily's alarm went off at 8 in the morning, and every part of her body wanted to ignore it. Her eyelids felt heavy. Her back ached from hours of walking around the diner. The small studio apartment was cold, the ceiling paint was cracked, and the window let in too much street noise. She rolled onto her back and stared at the water stain on the ceiling for a few seconds, trying to remember why her stomach felt so tight. Then she saw the scene again in her mind. The scratch, the note, the black sedan. "Oh God," she whispered. No one had called her during the night. Her phone lay on the small table beside the bed, silent. Part of her hoped the owner would never call, that they would somehow forget. Another part of her knew that people who drove cars like that did not just forget damage like that. She finally dragged herself out of bed, showered quickly, and put on her uniform. Black pants, white shirt, and a pale blue apron with the Harbor Street Diner logo on it. She tied her hair back, dabbed a little concealer under her eyes, and grabbed her bag. By 9, she was behind the counter, refilling sugar containers and aligning menus. "Morning, Em." The cook, Marcus Hill, called from the kitchen window. He was a tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and kind eyes. "You look like you fought a truck." She tried to smile. "Just a long night." "Any news from your landlord?" he asked. "About the leak?" "No," she answered. "But it's fine. I'll figure it out." He gave her a look that said he did not believe that, but he dropped it. The bell above the door rang as a couple of regulars walked in. Emily pasted on her work smile and grabbed her notepad. For a few hours,